still working with Planned Parenthood? Are you still teaching with them?
I do not have time. I have no time to teach with Planned Parenthood, so that's too bad. I love doing it. I loved doing it. The interesting thing about sex ed and the interesting thing about what the CDC is saying is that I never went into middle school classrooms. I did.
Right, we both did high school.
We both did high school, and the interesting thing about sex ed in general and teaching sex ed in general is that once you're the person at the front of the room, essentially you can say anything, you know. And I definitely did take license to say anything because not crazy nonsense, but like according to doctrine, you're not supposed to say that sex is fun or good or pleasurable or anything like that, right? The doctrine is you can't say anything like that. All you're supposed to do is talk about. It's like if you had a cooking show and you spent the entire time talking about salmonella, plasma trichinosis. Like that's all you could talk about is here's cooking, and by the way, you can't undercook a meat. You don't tell them how spices, or you don't tell them how salt, or anything. You just talk about temperatures and cooking time. Forget chocolate. Coffee kills you, and acid reflux from these foods, and blah blah blah.
Sounds like a medication ad.
Right? Yeah.
You take this, you got all these fucked up symptoms, and nobody's gonna want to be with you.
Side effects are generally mild and include constant bleeding from both sides.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. And so the weird thing about sex ed is that if there was a cooking show like that, you'd think that was freaking crazy. But sex ed, that's really officially all it's allowed to be.
Right, that's the official party line that you're supposed to tell them about the diseases and unwanted pregnancy.
And how to prevent all the nasty stuff. But you can't put that in the context of, okay, here's why you want to do this.
Right. Or here are other things you could do that are also fun and related.
Right.
Or safe.
Right.
Yeah,
and God forbid you can't talk about masturbation and stuff like that, you know, because of that. So, but the good thing is that's the party line. And the good thing is, and I think every sex ed teacher is very much like this, because when states try to put together like a sex ed curriculum, they always get shot down. But the thing is that it's not, I don't despair about it. I'm not talking about the CDC stuff, but I'm talking about efforts by the states to put together sex ed curriculum. I never get depressed about that, because what you have to know is that the one sucker in that whole school that's like the gym teacher or the science teacher or the English or whoever it is who wants to teach sex ed, that person is going to shut that door and give them their experience. Which I hope is not, I hope the sex ed teachers are not all, there are those sex ed teachers, and you know the people I'm talking about, who are just make the whole class about don't rape ladies. And believe me,
excuse me,
don't rape ladies.
It's a different.
It's different, yeah. And I, you know, like, no doubt, undoubtedly, that's a good thing to communicate, but not for the whole, like...
Right.
It's just,
or they're the ones that are purposefully giving misinformation, wrong information, or all the scary information, hoping that this will keep people from having sex. And and just as you know, with a young toddler, when you tell the child, don't touch that thing, it doesn't make them not touch it. It makes them learn not to touch it when you're watching. Right. So you could either...
Which is why we don't masturbate in public.
Right. So you could either take the thing out of their reach and stop dealing with that argument. Or understand that what you're teaching is limited. And I think the same thing happens here, is that they end up being taught, okay, that topic. Okay, not supposed to talk about that or do that with the lights on.
Yeah. And then once they get into that situation, which is, you know, unavoidable, they just blunder around and get chlamydia.
Right. Or don't get the Plan B pill.
Right.
Which is one of the things I kind of researched, which is that pharmacists are not giving it to 17-year-olds. They're being told that they cannot have it.
Even though legally they can.
Yes.
That's horrible. That was one of the main things I always said in class, is go out and get Plan B. Just get it. Doesn't matter. Just go to Planned Parenthood and get it. It's free, just get it. And then, put it in a drawer, and if you never use it, just throw it away. Who cares? I think that's the best thing people can do.
And Planned Parenthood clinics, if you are actually a patient at a Planned Parenthood clinic, and you go there to get tested, you go there to just do your regular pap smear, gyno exam. Guys can go there because young men should be testing for testicular cancer, should be getting a little checkup, right? Because that can happen in very young men. Planned Parenthood will just give you a little bit of Plan B and some condoms.
Right.
Actually, they gave me
Baggy, yeah.
2 Plan Bs?
Yes.
Sweet.
And they'll just give it to you. It's like a little door prize
Yeah.
for going in.
And that's what I think, the value of the class is, I think, to me, the value that I thought was getting across is to have one adult in their lives saying, yeah, you know what, sex is great, and you're going to do it at start a clock between now and 5 years from now, and you're probably going to be doing this. Sex is great, and then just so they don't feel like they're doing something rebellious by having sex or something like that. I don't know, but I thought it was good to get from an adult authority figure that yes, we know that sex is great, and then give them just the basic information that you can walk into a Planned Parenthood without shame and get all this stuff. Because I think kids probably won't go get condoms at stores and stuff. I don't think they will they?
No.
Probably not a young teen.
I think that's tough.
I don't think a teen.
I think about myself as a teen, obviously different time, but I don't think
You're
it
walking around with a package of condoms throughout the whole store, and you get to the checker, and you have like this fantasy or fear that all of a sudden she'll go out on the microphone and get a price check for some condoms.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a 14-year-old. Can you imagine a 14-year-old having the guts to get condoms? Oh my god. Like as a boy, I would have done that. Girl. Oh my god, a 14-year-old. I don't think a 14-year-old girl would get condoms.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And depending on the store, they're either all the way at the back of the store,
Right.
or they're locked up.
Or they're way at sometimes they're way at the front.
Right. So they're either all the way at the back, so you have to carry them all the way through the store,
Right.
or they're right at the front where everybody can see you.
Everybody, can't be in a basket.
Yeah, you should just pick up tampons while you're at it.
Right. Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of mouthwash, some
Yeah.
condoms. You're all set. Which, not a bad combination anyway.
No.
Actually.
I work with engineers, and there was an engineer today, a lady engineer, who was walking around with 2 tampons in the back pocket of her pants. And I was like, what? Maybe women's liberation has gotten here, because this lady clearly doesn't give a damn. I'm on my period!
And a little warning signal.
Yeah, a little warning,
Just so you
exactly.
know.
Just so you know.
As you're approaching me.
Oh no.
Be polite. Be polite.
I was like, wow.
Well, there's studies that show that when they're in the luteal phase of menstruation, their arousal level is low. So it's probably a good time for you to pick on her.
Oh, right.
Just letting you know.
Right, okay.
See?
So she's more calm. A little calm.
I don't know about calm. I'd say like, how would you express it? Like a little out of it, a little less sensitive, maybe.
All right. Oh,
Yeah.
there
Not
you
as
go.
quick to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as savvy, not as snappy,
Good.
not as witty.
No, there we go. There we
See?
go. All right.
You learn a
I
little
didn't know
something
that.
every day.
I know that.
It's always good to learn. So, do you have any other book projects?
I do.
Pretending you
I
had
mean,
time.
Yeah,
And sleep.
exactly. I know. I keep coming up with book projects, but then I have no time to do them. So yeah, I don't necessarily. This is terrible, but I'm a superstitious writer, and I don't talk about my book projects when I'm writing on them because you know why? Because I call it Truman Capote disease. Do you know the Truman Capote story? Where he wrote what was it? Answered Prayers, right? And he wrote and he went on Johnny Carson and he talked about it. Oh, I've got this book. There's that book where is that so-called book where he was hanging out with the upper crust of New York City and oh, here's what Jackie O is really like and blah blah blah. And it was really snarky. That's the word I was looking for. And he talked about Johnny Carson. He talked about the Cavett Show and blah blah blah. It's going to be a wonderful book. And he wrote a couple of chapters maybe for the New Yorker. And then when he died, there was nothing else. There was nothing. I think he had just talked it all out. You know?
Right.
And I don't know, maybe that's a made-up story for me. I mean, it's not made up that there was nothing left. But I heard that, so I read that story, and it made me paranoid. Like, oh my God, this guy is a great writer. Like a really amazing writer. and he just talked himself out. Because I think as a writer, you need to leave it like bottled up, and the only way out.
Let it gestate a while.
Yeah, let it
Marinating.
Yeah,
marinate. And don't let it out in other ways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like masturbating right before you have sex. You know, might work for the ladies. Maybe that's a men only analogy.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
Or masturbating out.
So do you think everybody should write a book like you and just like pass it on to their lover?
I think everybody should go through the thought process of what it would be to write a book like this. I think most people could not get through the process of writing a book. I'm not saying that for an egoistic. Obviously, many people can write books. Doesn't make me super special, but it's a marathon to write a book. It's a real marathon, and some people are sprinters, and so they'd be better off blogging about something.
Right.
And some people, everybody expresses themselves in a different way. Some people are just artistic and not so verbal. But I do think yes, that's exactly part of the point of the book, is that everybody should go through that thought process. Like, what would it be? What would your book, if you were to take the time to write a whole book, what would your book be like? What, Yeah. Would it be? Hello.
Size requirements.
Yeah, exactly. I never mentioned that. I don't mention anything like that. I tried not to mention any of the parts of sexuality that we're semi-obsessed with, which is like, appearance issues and tits and how big your dick is and blah blah blah. I try not to mention any of that because I don't know. I mean, to a certain extent that matters, but once you get into a relationship, it's what you're doing together.
Yeah, technique matters a lot.
Yeah, technique and what turns you on and stuff like that.
Were there any groupies? Did you get any communications from people who read and?
I did. I got a lot of Facebook traffic. My basic groupie demographic was women between 35 and 50 who probably had gone through a couple of men. I think women, when they're young, feel like they need to, in general, I think, just kind of, at least in my generation, feel like they need to keep it in and stuff like that and not give too much away.
Low mileage.
And stuff. Yeah, go low mileage. And then as women get older, they're like, what was I doing? That was a dumb strategy.
Let's amp it up a little.
Let's amp it up. And also, maybe women of that age amp it up because the men they're going with are, hopefully at that point, a little more competent,
Mm-hmm.
I read something that was really interesting, that college-age men are super interested in one-night stands. And college-age women are not as interested in one-night stands. And that concept that it's like some kind of prudishness or some kind of hyper-virginity thought or something like that is completely off base. Apparently, and this is such a brilliant explanation, I forget what the backing of this was, but or what the foundational research of this was, but I guess it was some kind of long questionnaire. But women aren't interested in one-night stands because they're not guaranteed to have an orgasm out of it, and men that they're having one-night stands.
Well, that totally makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
Yes.
I know. It totally makes sense. So it's not like women that, college girls are sitting around going, oh, I do not want to do this. They just don't want to waste their freaking time,
Right. Well, I would have to agree. That's one of my reasons for not partaking in one-night stands, is that I want to make sure that we're going to do a couple rounds or a couple sessions so that we could talk about this and you could do it right. Like, I don't really like the idea of, like, you're going to have a good time and I'm not. Like, it's not going to go down like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
So, unfortunately, most of the time that comes with some type of relationship or more open communication or...
Yeah. No, just a little community. Yeah.
Or at least acknowledge that sex is going to have to happen more than once for you to get it right.
Probably. We both just need to accept it and not be pissed off about it.
What about the Sam Malone concept? You find the guy who's the biggest slut in the business who's constantly catting around, assuming that he's probably pretty good anyway. Right?
He
You
might
know what I'm
be.
talking about. Cheers.
Right.
Usually
Cheers.
people...
I gotcha.
Sam Malone.
Yeah.
You find the guy that's sleeping with a girl every weekend, assume he's probably at least got to be skilled, so pick him? No?
No.
That only works in
People
sitcoms?
who toot their horn like that are not always the greatest. I think they're trying to compensate for something that's not really happening.
I think personally, like, having said that about girls not wanting one-night stands, I think, frankly, if sex with someone for the first time can't be at least a little exciting, you're doing something really wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
With
That
this
very
new
first
tits
time
and
with
new-
someone
yeah.
who
Yeah.
should be interesting and exciting.
At the
It is.
least.
It is.
Even if it doesn't.
Right. Even if it's not the greatest sex, it's at least interesting. So I think people who move on from person to person are probably, I wouldn't expect them to be the greatest at executing, you know. Like, to me, I find it most interesting. I've only, in the book and in my life, I've only slept with 11 women, and I think that, to me, making love to someone the 20th time is more interesting than making love to someone the first time. Because at that point, you
know what's going on.
You know what's going
You
on.
know what's going to turn them on. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me is the interesting part. I think anybody can screw someone a couple of times and make it interesting. You know.
It's interesting simply because they're new.
Yeah.
Right. You
Exactly.
have that new factor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But someone who's depending on that, somebody who's depending on that newness of the situation
Right.
to keep it hot and interesting,
Well, they need to bring some toys.
isn't necessarily gonna.
Right. Isn't necessarily going to be a great lover in
Right.
the long run. I don't think. Yeah. No, I agree.
Absolutely.
So.